Hello and welcome to Magic is Essential Radio. This is Unabashedly Resolute Podcast, and I'm your host, Wes Mullins. We're going to dive into some topics about health and wellness, apologetics, some politics, who knows what we'll get into. We'll talk about life, and we'll talk about love. We're going to talk about the whole gambit of the human experience. So fasten your seatbelts and get ready. Here we go. It's Friday, November 2nd, 2018. Never thought I'd see 2018. Well, today we're going to continue the topics of toxicity, but we're going to give you a little encouragement. Today we're going to ask the question, are you toxic to yourself? Here we go. What are the beliefs that you hold about yourself? Right? What are the things that you hold about yourself, your worth, and your destiny? If any of those things do not include the notion that you are more than a mere mortal, that you actually are extraordinary, that you are amazing, that there is no other person on earth like you, you are the person, the only one of a kind in a multitude of other people, but there's no one specifically like you. There's no one with your specific set of talents exactly to the proportion given to you. And you might not even know what talents and things you have inside of you because you've let someone else speak into your life and someone else determine who you are and what you are. Today I was listening to one of the podcasts that Nina and I usually listen to in the mornings. It's called Quote of the Day Podcast with Sean Croxton, and he has snippets from different speakers, different lecturers, and today was Wayne Dyer, and he said exactly that. He said, you have let people tell you and determine who you are. You've let them decide your future by telling you this is what you're good at, this is what you can do, and this is who you should be, and you believe it, and you forego the possibilities and potentials that actually lay inside of you. So today we're going to talk about toxicity, but I want to encourage you. This is not going to be a negative podcast. This is going to be an encouraging podcast. But let's think for a moment about the lies and the curses that we've spoken over ourselves to ensure that we don't succeed. So think about the curse you speak over yourself when someone says, you screwed that up, didn't you? And you're like, yeah, well, that's how I am. You know, that's what I do. Yeah, I'm a klutz. I'm this and that. We speak these things over ourselves, and that reinforces that into our brain and creates neural pathways that says, this is what I am, this is what I do. Society plays a role in that. Culture plays a role in that. Our sphere of influence plays a role in that. Our friends play a role in that. But we also play the biggest role in that. Because the person, I heard this today too, I thought this was great. I don't remember who actually said this. This was an NBA, a WNBA player. But she said, you have the most conversations with yourself. I liked how she said that. You have the most conversation with yourself. You are the one who is constantly speaking to yourself, either affirming, negating, or reimagining who you are. You know, there's a line in Hitch where one of the characters who's trying to find love looks at Hitch and says, these shoes aren't me. And Hitch says, you is a fluid term. You bought the shoes. You look good in the shoes. You is fluid. And I think I like that approach. I think that's not a horrible approach to have, that you is something that is fluid. Not in the sense of you are a deterministic pile of molecular structures, but you, as in the concept of your understanding of self, is in fact a bit fluid. Jordan Peterson, the clinical psychologist from the University of Toronto, says, what do you even know about what you think about yourself? How do you even know what you think about yourself? We have so many influences coming in from all around that our thought processes, we think thinking is easy. We think thinking is something that we do innately without having to put any effort into it. This is just how I think. This is just how I work. When I was a corporate trainer for Kentucky One Health System, I used to hate it when people would say, I'm a hands-on learner. I'm just a hands-on learner. And what they're saying is, I learn better with my hands. But there is more to them than that. They are not just a hands-on learner. People say, well, I'm a visual learner. I'm not an auditory learner. You know what? I was too when I was younger. But we grew up without television. And the fact of not having TV made my auditory skills become really refined because I had to listen to the radio. I listened to basketball games for the first decade of me loving UK basketball. I listened to the games, Kaywood Lefford and Ralph Hacker calling the games, the UK basketball games. I listened to it on the radio. I would visualize it on the court. I used to listen. My brother had a television in his room. The rest of us didn't have TV. He had a television in his room, and he would watch Star Trek. And as he would listen to these TV shows, I could hear them in visuals. I didn't have to see them. I could tell mostly what was going on by the dialogue, right? Or the way the language that they used. I began to develop auditory skills. Books on tape, listening to podcasts, these are ways for us to increase our auditory skills. So when someone says, I'm a visual learner, I say that might be true. You may have a visual inclination, but I bet mainly it's because you haven't exercised your auditory skills. You haven't exercised your intellectual skills, your thinking skills. Maria Konnikova has a book called Mastermind where she takes apart the brain and says there's two processes the brain uses to determine action and behavior and information. One is called the reflexive. She calls it the John Watson. It's a man of action. It's fast. It's hot. It's always popping. Something happens. Bam, 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 bam. It's reactionary. There is no real thinking involved. It is all either instinctive or it's all conditioned and learned behaviors. It's all reactionary. You're reacting to influences coming around you. So a lot of these things we say, well, I'm a klutz, or I'm stupid, or I'm not good at this, or I'm bad at this, or I'm poor at this, or I'm a visual learner, I'm this. And we say these things over ourselves. These are reflexive responses to a stimuli that's coming at us. We have a natural reaction to that stimuli. Whatever's coming at us, we react to it. And if we're using solely the reflexive part of our brain, then we're simply just reacting and reacting and reacting to it. It's action, reaction, action, reaction. There's no level or depth of thought. The other part of the brain is called the reflective brain, and this is the Holmes brain. It's the one that takes a pipe out and smokes 3 pipes to logically think through all the possibilities for all the evidence. Where John Watson's like, no, we need to rush out, and this guy's guilty. And then Holmes says, well, actually, no, it's this person who's guilty. And it's like, how'd you come to that conclusion? That's because I thought about it. So what do you know about your thinking? When you say, I am this, have you actually thought about why you're saying you're that? Have you looked at the roots behind this? So we know the how things work, but why do they work? We know we do this, but why do we do this? Why do we do this? And we're not sure exactly why we act the way we act. We think we do. Well, I act the way we act because my mother or father was this, or I grew up this way, I grew up that way. Well, that's actually, it's partly true, but it also could be part of the genetic fallacy, saying that the way you were raised or the area in which you were raised determines how you think. Because if that's true, then everyone has to think that way. But I was raised up in rural Ohio with lots of values and things that I don't hold today and didn't hold then, and challenged values that were held there. But how could that happen? I challenged values even in family life. I challenged things. How could I do that if my atmosphere around me determines my thought? That's a deterministic thinking, because it says that everything previous to me determines my destiny. That's called determinism. And that's not what we need to think. We don't need to think, I am this way, I'm always going to be this way, because that is toxic to yourself. You are stymieing yourself, and because you're allowing others and yourself to speak things over you that are not true. Or they might be true now, but that doesn't mean they have to be true always. Yes, I may have had problems in the past. People who knew me growing up, I was a hyperactive kid. I was out of control. I was erratic. I was rash. I know my aunts and uncles thought, this guy he's a train wreck. He's going to screw up his life so bad. And I did for a while. And then it snapped. It clicked. And I was like, oh, here we go. Do you know why it snapped and clicked? Because I continuously worked on my thinking and how I see myself. I constantly am doing self-help. I am constantly working on who I am to create a better perception of reality, create a better perception of myself, and see where I'm where I'm restricting myself, when I'm holding myself back. And we need to look at how we think. The things I've talked about this week, about your thinking and your moods and all this. Are these toxic? Are your thoughts toxic? Is your language toxic? What is it? So are you actually toxic to yourself? This is the biggest question. What are you doing to yourself that undermines you? Okay, you need to learn how to think about yourself. As a Christian, we think that the Bible teaches that every person is made in the image of God. C.S. Lewis says there are no mere mortals. We are all immortals. We are all made for some purpose and design. It's teleological understanding. Teleology means a designer, argument from a designer purpose. We were made with a purpose beyond just this world. C.S. Lewis also says, if I have a desire in my heart that cannot be satisfied by anything on this earth, I must have been made for a different world. We have something inside of us. Nina and I talk about here at Magic is Essential. Our whole mission, our whole goal is to unlock in you the potential of magic, not magic like in Houdini, but is like true Narnian deep magic, that there are things inside of you that are roiling and bubbling, and we continue to stymie and throw water on and hold down because we don't see a reason to let them out, because this is all we have. We have this, and this doesn't match how I see myself. So our dreams we have, the things, the passions inside of us don't match what we see in the outside world, and it doesn't match what people say we are. And so our perceptions of ourselves don't match our dreams, and we say, therefore, it is impossible, because our perceptions don't match our passions. Who we are doesn't match who we can become. And you need to bridge that gap. You need to break that wide open and realize that if you are having a passion or a vision about something, that it is actually possible. But there are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts to you understanding who you are and you going after your passions. There's no life hack. The millennial generation and the generation coming after that are always looking for the quick way out. There's got to be a quicker way to make a buck. There's got to be a quicker way to get this information out. There has to be a life hack for this. You old dinosaurs, and your rotary phones and your no internet and you're writing in cursive. Listen, guys, the questions that you have to answer about yourself, there is no life hack. There is no shortcut. Everyone has to ask and answer the same questions. Who am I? Where am I? What am I? Am I good? Is there anything after me? We have to answer those questions. Ravi Zacharias puts the questions in 4 categories: origin, morality, meaning, and destiny. And we have to answer those. We have to wrestle them out. I don't care if you're the King of England, the Queen of England. I don't care if you are some disadvantaged person in a developing nation. It doesn't matter. You have to answer that question in the surroundings that you're placed. You have to answer the question in your environment, and everyone can answer those questions, and everyone can see futures beyond their environments. And I mean that you can have a vision. So the Bible tells us that in the minor prophets that the people perish because they lack vision. They lack a vision, and and they perish. And you'll know that when you give up on your passions and your dreams, a lot of times you lose hope. And in this world right now that we're having, in this post-truth, post-Christian societies that we're seeing in the West, we are seeing people lose meaning, they're losing value, and they're losing, most of all, hope. Hope can bridge the gap between your perception of yourself and your passions and your destiny. And I know that word destiny is scary to some people. They're like, destiny. Ooh, that sounds like I was made for a purpose or a reason, but I believe that I'm just determined. I believe that each one of us is made for something so much more than this, that every person as an individual is completely capable of reaching their potentials, because guess what, guys? Not everybody wants the same thing. Not everybody wants to be rich. Not everybody wants to be a hoarder of things. Not everybody wants to live in a mansion and a castle. People don't want that. What people want is things that move their heart. People want to be moved, and you want to be moved, and you want to be moved in your heart. That's why we listen to music. One of the things that Nina and I do is we watch the show The Voice. And the reason why we watch it, and one of the reasons is because, well, there's great music. But the other reason that I love to watch it in particular is because these people are sold out on themselves. I have a gift, is what they say. I have a talent, and I can't do anything else. I'm playing 250 shows a year. I'm playing 4 or 5 shows a night in bars, in casinos, in wherever. I'm playing. Why? Because they have a passion for music. Not everybody wants to be the Wall Street tycoon, or not everybody. Some people just want to be heard. Actually, all of us want to be seen and want to be heard. And so if your perception of yourself limits you being seen or being heard, then you have a wrong perception. Remember yesterday I talked about that you could have a wrong perception of yourself, and that if you have an introversion could actually be an extrovert who has allowed fear to take over and has allowed themselves to be tricked into thinking they're an introvert because they have a bad habit and they have a dysfunctional tool in a relationship, and it causes them to be introverted. They're not really introverted, but in this situation they are, and so they feel like that I'm an introvert, but they're actually not. They're actually this extrovert waiting to burst forth, but because of bad habits that they've created, they've actually stymied themselves. So today I'd like to challenge you to think good thoughts about yourself. Not in a narcissistic way, but know that you are wonderfully and amazingly made, and that you are this amazing creature. Think about this. The possibilities that life could exist. John Polkinghorne of Cambridge says, the probability of that is like going 20,000 light years away, shooting a bullet and hitting a 1-inch target, dead on bullseye. Roger Penrose says, if you put a 0 on every molecule in the universe, you would be grossly short of the probability that life would exist. Now, that's just life existing. You, as an individual with consciousness and reasoning faculties, you that has a will, and you that has an energy and a passion and a desire and a soul, that is unconscionable and inconceivable unless you have a purpose. Unless you being here, there is a reason for your existence, and it is not to be what someone else said you are. It is to be the thing that God has placed inside of you. It is to be the person that you desire to be in your heart, unless you desire to be something evil, and then, of course, that's not correct. I'm talking about the pure intention of desire. I'm not talking about the twisted, perverted sense of desire. Everything has 2 sides, right? So there is a pure side of desire, and there's also a negative, evil side of desire. I'm talking about the purest desire, where you follow in the footsteps of absolute truths into that desire. That was highly controversial for those of you that out there with the apologetics and philosophical world. I understand that. moving right along. Because I want to tell you something. I grew up in a small town, and I used to shoot basketball, and I used to think about all the places I would go and all the things that I would do. And I always had this thing inside of me that says, you were made for more than this town. You were made for more than this town. And my dad, even my late father, even wanted me to work in his job at a plant right next door. It was 200 feet away from our house. And he wanted me to work there. He says, you'll have sorry, almost knocked over my diffuser. You'll have a great job. You'll have lots of money. And you won't have to worry about anything. And he was doing what was called risk management. He was managing the risk of life. And he was saying, if you don't step out, you won't get hurt. You stay here, you'll be safe. And like the psalmist says, deep called to deep, and I couldn't stay. I knew I was meant for greater things. I knew I was meant for something more than that. And I've been to about 26 or 27 countries. I've studied at Oxford University. I've been to amazing, beautiful places, and I've met people in Nepal and Mexico, and I've been to Haiti after the earthquake, and I've seen so many amazing things in my life. I have a degree. I never thought I would even go to college. I got to preach in a college chapel in Oxford, and it was just amazing. And I look at all the amazing things that I've been on top of mountaintops in Norway that are just absolutely breathtaking. I couldn't even imagine how beautiful it was going to be. Why did I get to do these things? Because I refused to let someone tell me what my limitations were. I refused to believe that I wasn't good enough. I refused to believe that I had to live my life on someone else's terms. And I kept pushing, even when it was impossible. You know, one time, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I actually, one time was offered the speechwriter for the governor of Kentucky, Ernie Fletcher. No one thought I had a shot. I had a buddy of mine who worked there and got me an interview. I'm not going to dance around that. A buddy of mine was one of his advances. They worked for the governor and just said, hey, my buddy graduated with a degree in English from South Carolina University. Can you get an interview? And I did. I had an interview with Acheive, which was his chief of staff, and the interview went well, and I got an interview with the governor. And I'm going to tell you right now, guys, it was the best interview I have ever done in my life. Why? Because I knew I belonged in that room with him. I went into the interview, and I didn't think, oh, I can't believe I'm in an interview with the governor. I'm so nervous. I went in going, no, this is right where I belong. I have nothing to fear. I am not less than this man. I am as good here as anywhere. And I believe completely in myself. Got offered the job. For personal reasons, we turned it down. Got offered a raise and still had to turn it down and walk away from it. Best decision I made. One of the best decisions I made in my life was to turn that down. Nina and I were working on our marriage during a real rocky time. And the stress in election year probably wasn't going to be the best thing for it. But think about that. The opportunities that from going from a kid in a middle class family in rural Kentucky of a town of 500 people, a little village out in the middle of nowhere, gets a job as a speechwriter for Kentucky. He travels the world. I was an international wedding photographer, guys, an international wedding photographer. I didn't even like photography that much. And I wound up shooting weddings all over the world. Studied at Oxford University, studied theology and apologetics at Oxford last year. Hoping to go back and study again. Why? Because I believe that that's where I'm supposed to be. I believe that I fit in there. I don't take a backstage or a back seat to anyone. I believe that I honestly need to be there. Because I'm not going to let someone else tell me what my future is and limit the perceptions I have of myself and in turn limit my destiny. We have the opportunity, people, to be who we want to be. We can change that. Don't be toxins. Don't speak toxicity into yourself. Speak life over yourself. I'm still crafting this creed for myself that I'll be speaking over myself every day. I'm still working on that. I suggest you guys also work on a creed, and when I get my creed finished, I'm going to publish it and get it out there and let you guys see kind of what it looks like, and then maybe craft your own and wake up every day and say this, because you are worth it. You are worth it. You have value. You have meaning in your life and your reason for being on this earth. You are meant to be here, and you have a purpose, and there is a design for your life. And we at Magic is Essential want to see that come to pass. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you have a great Friday. I hope you were encouraged. And we'll see you back on Monday. Have a great weekend.